The Shark Deck.
Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. I'm laughing at the new crowd thing I added in there. It cracks me up. Hasan Minhaj. Hey, Johnny Mac knows what he's talking about. Puck News reporting that Hasan Minhaj has been informed by the Daily Show parent Paramount Global that he is not going to be the next host. According to Puck, Minhaj's deal to take over the Daily Show was all but done until that piece in the New Yorker ran on September 15th. Matt Maloney in Puck writes, in fact, Minhaj would have been announced as the new Daily Show host this summer had the strike not intervened. Instead, both sides sat on the announcement and then disaster. Wow. The controversy, in case you forget, in his last stand-up special, Minhaj has now admitted to making up a lot of the stuff, and the controversy comes around that it's not really exaggerating like how much you had for lunch. He was making people feel bad about serious topics. He said, my comedy, Arnold Palmer, is 70% emotional truth. This happened, and then 30% hyperbole, exaggeration, fiction. Some people who host podcasts in their basement started wondering, would he be a bad fit for The Daily Show? It seems Paramount Global, whatever they are, agrees. Comedy Central's search has been complicated by Roy Wood Jr.'s decision to leave after 8 years, although he has indicated if he's offered the host gig, he would come back. Sarah Silverman, I'll talk about in the second half. I think she has now taken herself out of the running, and I will personally be surprised if she actually does her guest hosting gig. I think that's next week. I'll do that in the Israel section of the podcast. And you know who would be a good choice? Jon Stewart. Stay with me. He's free now. Word came out late last week that Jon Stewart's show on Apple is, some people are using coming to an end, other people are using the word canceled. The New York Times reports Jon Stewart and Apple executives decided to part ways. Apparently, Stewart and Apple had disagreements over some of the topics and guests on the problem with Jon Stewart. Two people involved said that Jon Stewart told members of his staff last week that potential show topics related to China and artificial intelligence were causing concern among Apple executives. So that show's over. Now, it was kind of a big story, but on the other hand, until I mentioned it, did you remember that Jon Stewart had a show on Apple? I've checked it out lightly, and it just doesn't have the fun of The Daily Show. The Times tags it with as the 2024 presidential campaign begins to heat up. One person said there was potential for further creative disagreements. All right, everybody, let's all take a time out here. Jon, Comedy Central, CBS, let's all think about this for a second. You don't have a host for The Daily Show. Jon doesn't have a gig. There was a writer's strike and a lot of shows are behind. And the presidential election is coming. You know who's really good at that? Jon Stewart. Why don't you all do this? Pay Jon a bag load of money to host The Daily Show for 1 year, starting 5 minutes from now, and he can go through right after the election, right? Wouldn't that make a lot of sense? Let me go even further. Why not air it on CBS proper? Put The Daily Show on CBS proper at like 10:30 at night and let Jon do his thing for a year. I think that would do really well. A year from now, yeah, you'll have The Daily Show problem again, but you can groom a next host along the way. When Jon takes a week off, put someone in the chair. Remember the time Jon took the summer off and John Oliver hosted it and crushed it? And whatever happened to John Oliver? Oh yeah, he's got the similar show on HBO. So pay Jon. Jon, you come back, take a victory lap, do your thing for a year, put it on CBS at 10:30, and when Jon is off, or maybe on Friday nights, have somebody else host the show and groom your next host. Listen to me, everybody. That plan makes a lot of sense for everyone, including the viewers. If you were looking forward to The Office coming back, American Office co-creator Greg Daniels says, yo, relax. I'm paraphrasing there. He said, I think it's very speculative. The fact that it kind of blew up based on one line in a Puck piece was kind of cool, I guess, in the sense that the fans still care a lot. But the thing I would say is when there's something to announce, I will definitely announce it. So no Office reboot anytime soon. Critically acclaimed comedian Adam Sandler getting a lot of praise. He's been hailed by social media users after a viewer showed the critically acclaimed Adam Sandler doing everything in his power to get aid to a fan who was having a medical emergency during an Adam Sandler concert last week. Sandler overheard an audience member yelling, medical emergency. With that, Sandler stopped the show and instructed emergency responders and paramedics to the distressed fan. On a clip that you can find on TikTok, Adam Sandler can be heard directing the EMTs to the person in need. Sandler asks, yo, medic coming? All right, here comes the medic. Okay, here we go. Over here, guys, right down to the left. But apparently, the responders weren't moving fast enough for Adam Sandler, who began enticing them to hurry along. Sandler said, let's go, all right, let's get there, y'all. Then he consoled the crowd, saying, everything's going to be right. Love y'all. The crowd began to cheer the medics. Sandler said, let's take a few seconds. Let's let these guys concentrate. As the attendee was taken out on a gurney, Adam Sandler said, "Okay, feel better, bro." Some social media users wrote, "This is why Adam Sandler will always be my favorite comedian." Another added, "A man of the people." TMZ speculates the person who was having the medical emergency was dehydrated. And they seem to be doing okay now. That's good news. Pitchfork has that article. I shared it in the Facebook group, Daily Comedy News Podcast group. Porn bots, you're not welcome. Please go away. Pitchfork and John Mulaney talked about what music John Mulaney was at various ages. At age 10, Mulaney was into Led Zeppelin's No Quarter. John talked about going to used CD shops and said, "When I was 10, we acquired every Led Zeppelin album in some form, mainly tapes. I couldn't believe how good they were and how it was not like anything else. In 1992, I thought I was a pretty savvy kid at 10. But I remember reading the Zeppelin biography Hammer of the Gods and being scandalized by that book. I have a visceral memory of standing in my basement against the staircase, listening to Houses of the Holy, which is probably still my favorite Led Zeppelin album, listening to No Quarter on my Walkman. It was the first time I realized, oh, it's a dark world. There's another side to the coin that's a little scary. No Quarter is scary? All right. Houses of the Holy, great album, though. Exclaim did not enjoy the Bill Burr movie Old Dads. You'll find it on Netflix. Their headline, Old Dads Yells at Cloud, directed by Bill Burr. Oh no. Exclaim writes, in the 1996 episode of The Simpsons entitled Homerpalooza, Abe Simpson tells a teenage Homer, I used to be with it. But then they changed what it was. And what's it seems weird and scary. It'll happen to you. Sure does, Abe Simpson. You find yourself in a basement with some sort of comedy expertise and you look at TikTok and you go, I don't get it. And you go back to talking about Jerry Seinfeld. I feel ya. Exclaim writes, the thinly constructed Netflix R-rated comedy attempts to take aim at both the easily triggered liberals who think they're moving society forward and those who cling to the glory days of the past. It misses both targets. The film spends so much time letting the dads be blissfully out of touch and then just shrugs it off with a what can you do, they're old kind of malaise. As a director, Bill Burr displays discomfort in letting any meaningful moment breathe. Similar to how a person uncomfortable with silence needs to make noise, the comedian turned filmmaker breaks up any semblance of a meaningful moment with nonsensical gags. This is especially noticeable when the men interact with any of the poorly written female characters, who range from demanding to shrill to nondescript. Do you hear the little frog in my voice? I didn't record 9 podcasts. This is the only podcast I've recorded today. Johnny Mac's a little fuzzy. I don't know what's going on. I feel fine. Sam Morril talked to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and said, I need a break off the road at some point. It's starting to kill me. Then again, I've been saying that for 10 years. I need to be annoyed, like in somewhat of a state of irritation to write jokes. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld's stand-up is about being annoyed. Jerry's a billionaire, and he's still annoyed. The press of Atlantic City asked Brian Regan a question, and his answer is so unbelievably lame. Brian Regan, come on, man. Play along a little. The question, who besides you, Brian Regan, is doing good stand-up right now? A lot of comedians get asked that question, and most comedians will mention somebody who is earlier on in their career and try and spotlight them. Brian Regan's answer to who besides you is doing good stand-up right now was, I still like watching Jerry Seinfeld play a little bit. Really? Jerry Seinfeld? Is he new? I haven't heard of him. Gee, Brian, thanks for telling us that Jerry Seinfeld is good at stand-up. Nobody in America knows that. Brian says. He's somebody who really loves doing stand-up. Even when he's doing his TV show, he wanted to get back to doing stand-up comedy. He's still writing cool, funny, different, interesting stuff. It's cool to sit in an audience and watch somebody who's a master at it. I would put him at the top. So there you have it, listeners. If you want to check out a new comedian, check out Jerry Seinfeld, apparently an observational comedian. I think he's opening for Jim Gaffigan. From the wig, Jim Jefferies found himself at the Kingston Health Sciences Center. Jim said, I wake up in the morning and I'm going down to my car. We got to drive to Ottawa for the next gig, 2-hour drive, and I feel a sharp pain. I basically assume my appendix had burst. I'm in the car. I'm screaming. We go to the emergency ward. Everyone in the emergency ward was at the gig the night before. They're like, hey, Jim, that was a really great show last night. I really enjoyed it. Can I have a photo? Jim apparently had kidney stones. I had a terrible kidney stone once, and since then I have stopped drinking tea. I've almost cut out chocolate. I do have a weakness. Both those create kidney stones. And I drink so much water. If you hung out with me, you would be amazed. All I do all day, I have my iced coffee in the morning. That's a real thing that I do. And that's the only thing I drink all day that's not water. I have those big plastic bottles and I just drink water, because I never want a kidney stone again. Jefferies described Kingston as a smallish sort of town and the Harvard of Canada, if there is such a thing. One of the many things I do is I host a show on the Live One app. It is called the Weekly Comedy Thing, and I had tried to start plugging it, and I've noticed more of you are listening to it when I plug it here. You go to the app, Live One. It's free. and the show's called The Weekly Comedy Thing. And what that is, it's like this, except the stories are shorter, but I can actually play the bits. So if I talk about Nate Bargatze hosting SNL, I can actually play a Nate Bargatze clip after the story, right? So it's the forerunner of this. So a lot more comedy, a lot less me. Some of you were like, that sounds pretty awesome. I agree. So about a month ago, I was like, I do a terrible job promoting it. I'm going to promote it every Monday. This is the 5th Monday. And I have actually remembered today. Last week I forgot. The week before I remembered. The week before that I forgot. And week 1, of course, I remembered because that was starting. I am the worst, but I'm going to tell you what's on the show today. Weekly Comedy Thing on the Live One app. Nate Bargatze talking about SNL. Pete Holmes has a new special. Robin Williams forgetting his friends. Hasan Minhaj not getting the Daily Show. So you get the vibe here, right? You listen to the podcast. You're like, yeah, I know all those stories. But I tell those stories in like 20 seconds and then play the comedians. Also on the show this week, Gabe Iglesias, Bert Kreischer, Joe Coy, John Marco Ceresi. He shares his ravioli recipe. He's fantastic. Joan Rivers, a guy who does really well in the charts, and there's like no press about him, and I don't even know how to say his name. I've been pronouncing it Jono Zalay. I don't know. Jono, new word, Zalay. However you say your name, very funny. Kumail Nanjiani. A clip from my running mix by The Lonely Island. They have a version of the Rocky song that is very funny, and I have that buried about 55 minutes into my running mix to keep me going. I did that in honor of Burt Young and Tim Minchin, who's a fantastic comedian. And I found a clip where he did a song a few years back about Israel and Palestine. I know, you're like, third rail, Johnny Mac. Tim nailed it. Check it out, Weekly Comedy Thing on the Live One app. All right, this is the post-commercials Israel segment of the show. Told you last week, Omid Jalili had to cancel a show because of some threats. He tagged it with, never thought I'd say, I'm going to Northern Ireland for stand-up gigs because it's way safer. And I'll add the headline here on this next story from the New York Post. Backpedal much? Listen to this. Sarah Silverman claims she made a mistake, while stoned after she shared a post that defended Israel's move to pressure Hamas for the release of hostages by cutting off water and electricity to Gaza. If you've ever heard of backpedal, here's one. The original Instagram story, Sarah said, many are saying that it's inhumane that Israel is cutting off water/electricity to Gaza. Israel made it pretty simple, release the hostages and we'll turn it back on. Instead of pleading with Hamas to release civilian hostages, which include babies and toddlers, there are politicians, cough AOC, calling Israel inhumane. If this isn't enough for you, Israel does not need to supply Gaza with these resources, which they do for free. If Hamas didn't spend billions of dollars on terrorism, they would be able to build the infrastructure to support themselves. So the reaction to that, and nobody involved here is pro-terrorism, but people argued that cutting off civilians' access to water and electricity is a human rights violation, according to the New York Post. Sarah took the post down, and she gave a reason. And here's the backpedal, according to Johnny Mac. Sarah wrote, "Oh, F yeah, I took that down. I put it in stories from someone, realized it was a mistake to post in the stoned fury of wondering where the hostages are and all this madness. NASA gave Sally Ride 100 tampons. One user responded, I get high damn near every day and find a way to go help people. Never has it crossed my mind I should support war crimes. And now it's time for Awkward Segue. According to a press release, Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club at the Link is home to the first permanent installation of a proto-hologram unit. Yes. The press release calls it the first holographic communications platform and a hologram machine that makes holoportation a reality. So you go to Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club and fans can see Jimmy and Guillermo in recorded hologram form. They greet the guests and they riff on Las Vegas. And additionally, the technology will allow Jimmy Kimmel and other celebrities to beam in live from LA to surprise fans, interacting with them in real time. I've been showbiz adjacent in radio for 30 years. That will, I don't want to say it'll never happen. It will happen once so they can do one more press release. But if you think like every 4 days, Jimmy Kimmel's stepping on the holodeck to interact with people at his club, good luck waiting on that. Coming up in December, another installment of the It's Always Punny in Philadelphia comedy tournament. Cindy Heffron has been riffing puns since she was in high school. And pay attention to this quote because I missed it the first time and I'm doing this sentence a second time. Cindy said, a lot of people think puns are like dad jokes, but just because you become a dad doesn't mean your pun skills become apparent. That's the kind of stuff a pun is. Groans are just as important as laughs. I've gotten quite a few of both. Makes you feel good that you're sharing. Millen Batips Jr. said, puns are supposed to be bad. I'll tell a joke and people say, that's so bad that they laugh. Well, it was really good then. The next event, December 5th, If you're curious about this, check out the Always Punny in Philadelphia website. I was preparing the copy for the Palace Intrigue podcast. That's the one about the royal family that I'm the writer on. If you want to check out some quality Meghan Markle gossip most days, check out Palace Intrigue wherever you get your shows. Rose Matafeo revealed that she got very, very drunk after dying on her arse at the Royal Variety performance. She's a New Zealand comic, and she said her style of comedy didn't go down so well. The show was performed in front of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Rose recalled meeting them in the lineup afterwards, saying, Meghan kind of glided over. It was almost like she was on a hoverboard. She glided over like Mrs. Danvers, and she was like, you must be so proud. And I was like, of what? Of dying on my arse in front of the effing royals? Yeah, I'll be writing home about that. Rose said she got so drunk afterwards, she realized she had locked herself out of her apartment, so she called Nish Kumar, knowing that he'd still be up. I knocked on his door and he let me in. Pretty drunk, actually. I was drunk. Would have been great if he was drunk. Nish took a picture of me in the sort of outfit that I had on and just drinking a glass of water, feeling very embarrassed. Ronan Hirschberg will tape his next special today at the Comedy Cellar in New York City. The description: Ronan Hirschberg is a loud, neurotic Jew from Louisville, Kentucky. He has performed his high-energy, joke-packed comedy on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, Corden, Comedy Central, and his latest special, Jokes from the Underground, was included in the New York Times Best Comedy of 2022, where Jason Zinneman, who, if you listen every day, you know I respect the heck out of, called it the funniest YouTube special of the year. All right, if you're in New York City, head over to the Cellar tonight. That is your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your shows. And if you're not a porn bot, join the Facebook group, Daily Comedy News Podcast Group. See you tomorrow.